Hello and welcome to Stampscapes Friday Night Live on this Good Friday here, 2025. We're doing a triptych here, kind of a pseudo triptych. It's really just one scene that I'm breaking up into three pieces like this when it's all done, but we're kind of approaching it as one scene. If it is to be broken up, I do want these to read somewhat as, like they could be individual pieces too. Not really, so much on this one, but I thought it can just, I don't know, it might add an element of interest in this. And we're going to do some spot coloring on this. I'm going to do this composition right here that I really liked, but I just wanted to kind of expand on this idea of this one and see what it would look like in this extended format here. So we'll see what that might look like here. This is a piece of the vintage paper, so I'm using my hybrid ink, something that's a little bit thicker than dye-based ink would be good. Your VersaFine Clair would be excellent. A black Brilliance pad or something like that. Black pigment ink pad would be fine. The hybrid ink here is kind of a combination of, I believe, oil-based pigment and water-based dye. How that works, I have no idea, but the manufacturer wasn't even quite sure what's in this, but they're calling it a hybrid. Those are the two main inks, so that's what we're assuming is in the composition of this ink right here. But any kind, like I said, a lot of people have VersaFine Clairs, and that would be an excellent choice for this type of paper, just because it is thicker, and when you're going over something like a pre-printed paper, you're stamping over kind of a little bit more of a sealed surface than just like a plain white piece of paper or something like that. It's even more sealed off than I would say most glossy cardstocks, because that gloss on cardstocks is really meant to be printed on. And so is this one. This one you put through your inkjet printer or something like that and print out documents and things like that on. But it still can have a little bit of a resistance to ink if they're too thin, such as dye-based inks. Hello, Patty and Linda. How are you? Happy Friday to you both. Hope you're all both well. How are the hands doing, Linda? All right, so let's see here. I was trying to get a lot of this stamped out before I came on here, just to save you guys the whatever, the boredom. Save you from some boredom here. Let's see. Sorry for my head if it's in the way here. All right, I'm doing this composition a little bit differently from last night. I've cut down on the height of this a little bit because I'm going to have to mount this piece on an 8.5 by 11. So I cut off about an inch, or half inch off the top and half inch off the bottom, off this paper right here, and I've taken off the same. So it'd be 7.5 by 10, I believe. Oh, no, I changed it. I think, let me see. These are 3. I'll figure it out. Let me see. 3.5, 3. I don't know. Maybe it's 3.5 and 3.5 across here. Okay, that is the Seaside Cove small. Oops, I went into that rock a little bit. Which shouldn't be a problem. You just kind of remedy any types of printing issues that you might have when doing this type of thing with, in this case, colored pencils. Hello, Candy, Sharita, Circus of Art. Oh, hello in Germany. Welcome. Glad to have you. What time is it in Germany? Right now we're looking at 4:11 p.m. here. Okay, now what I'm thinking about is a little bit more continuity between far left and right here. 1:11. Is that 1:11? That's 1:11 a.m., right? I would assume that's when it is. If so, thanks for joining in and in late night there. I'm always up at like, yeah, I'm always up at that in the late night myself. I would do sometimes. I do live streams sometimes at night. I haven't done it in a while though. Okay, let's see. All right, so we need to bring in some of these trees over into this area, and I'm thinking about right on the horizon there to kind of balance things off. Again, I'm kind of thinking in terms of these pieces, kind of like this, though. So I want this to be kind of a composition into itself, a little bit, you know. So, and I'm going to put some figure right up on this ledge right here in that spot coloring. So I'm thinking about these trees right in here in the distance. Maybe we'll come into it from over here. Yeah, actually, that looks better, I think, huh? Circus of Art. Do you have a YouTube channel, Circus of Art? Let's see, Evening Mary. Yeah, a little triptych here on that one. Always mat my cards. I prefer triple matting, huh, Candy? Yeah, the pieces look so much better, huh, when matted. I wasn't doing that for a long time, you know, just like concentrating on the pieces. I knew they looked better formatted into cards and mat, you know, with the matting, but I just was not focused on that for the longest time. Sometimes still, I don't mat some things, but things like the mirror cards, you know, the reflection cards, the horizon cards. It's like, I don't know. Some people see that as extra work, but in some ways it's like easier because you don't have to do any matting. It's just in the card format, you know. All right, let's see here. All right, we're just masking off. Easiest mask you'll ever do. Seaside Cove, just going with a straight line right here. I'm trying to keep these together as much as possible. And, let's see, I might need a separate mask. Make that. Okay, here, I don't need that one right now. Let's just go over here like so. And we'll cover up some of the open trees in here. And we'll go like this, under mask, you know, quite a bit, although I should get a big space. I might get a space anyway, you know, with this type of mask in here, but if I do, you just fill it in, you know, like I said, in this case I'll be using a colored pencil, so it's real easy. Stand up to get a little bit extra pressure, like so. We got that like that. And we need some sort of tree over here, but I don't want to block off the background in here because we got that figure that's going to go in here, so maybe I'll do this. Maybe we'll say that this, see this ledge right here? I made it one continuous one right here. Or that's what it's supposed to be. But what I'll do is I'll say that this is much closer than this one right here, and I'll put some trees right in here, and maybe like a little bit up here, I'm not sure. Or do I go, actually, because this is right here. I'm thinking about scale here, if I should go with a larger tree. Let's go with a bit of a larger one. Let's take this one again. This is the same one that's stamped over here, or no, I have that open tree right here. We'll figure it out here. Let's go with this right here. I'll just use a portion of this tree right here, so I won't use this whole one up here, but I'll go like down here. I have a corner die that cuts slits so you can easily mat. Oh, that sounds good, Candy. And now, Circus of Art opening soon. So much of projects. Okay. What's a cool YouTube name? It's a evocative name. It makes me curious. It piques my interest. Circus of Art. All right. Okay, let's just mask that off like so. I better get a fresh paper towel here. It's going to soak right through that wet area of that paper towel. And we'll go right about like so, I think. Right here. Hopefully it reads. I'm stamping it over the back, or over the front of these rocks here. So hopefully it doesn't get kind of convoluted in terms of the forms over the top of that type of patterning in there. Yeah, I didn't get it down there. That mask was a little bit tight there. Let me do this right here. Actually, what do you do in scenic stamping if something doesn't, here, it has to be this other side. If something doesn't stamp out, you just stamp it over again. That's the beauty of scenic stamping, is layering. Looks perfectly natural because that's what's happening out in nature anyway. Actually, that looks better too. It's a little bit darker. And let's do this. Take that like so. And okay, about like that. I don't want one up there. That's too high, I think. And down here, that's really dark there. Right now, I'm going to have to really darken up this area right in here to match it tonally, or try to. All right. Let's get some of this stuff out of the way here. Okay. Circus of Art, do you use rubber stamps at all? My question is, if you say yes, I was going to ask you if you go to, is it called Stempel Mecca, I believe? That's the convention, the stamp convention in Germany by Hein Design. Okay, let's see. All right, let's get this figure in here. This figure was the one that was in this piece, right? This is a really easy piece right here, but I was thinking, okay, how am I going to stamp that figure out? Because it was just in red, it's going to look kind of weird. It's going to look really flat. And I was wondering how she would look. Just in red. I thought she would look too flat, but I was wondering if I could tone the dress in, with some extra shading and if it'd look okay. And I thought it did. And then I was also wondering, okay, is it going to stand out enough against this, this patterned, toned background of the vintage paper? And I guess just because it's the only color in the piece, I think it worked out fine. Okay, let's see. This is how I did this yesterday. I just kind of added tone in like this using the corner of my pad. Like that, and I inked up the top of her, and then the breast is a dress, right? But the red kind of goes up there a little bit. And because I wanted to do some kind of blending of the form anyway, or not the form, but the tones in here. So I went like this, and I kind of went up into that black a little bit so that it's not just kind of black up top and red down below. There's a little bit of a kind of a section in between the red and the black up here, and I just kind of did a little fusion of those two inks, so it's like a darker red. That's what I tried to do, at least. That was the concept, but again, I just figured, okay, if I don't get it, I'll get it in the colored pencil. Okay, let's see here. I can't see through my dirty piece of tack and peel. Okay, this one right here, these little figures with their hands raised, put your pressure kind of towards the bottom of the stamp and don't put it up by the hands, otherwise it looks like it smashes out the hands too much and makes it look like she's wearing boxing gloves. All right, so see, that's how that looked. That's how that looks without that extra little tone on there. Like that. It's flat, just because it's one color like that. I guess you could put a little bit of black on the back of this and kind of blend the colors on here so that when you stamp it out, it inherently has a little bit of that transitioning color or shadow. But I don't know. It just seems like it's easy to do that with the colored pencil, and you have kind of a decent amount of control doing it that way. All right, so we have these three pieces, and there's a little bit of continuity going across three. We have these trees over here, pines in this one, and a little bit in this one. It's not really that visible. These textures are going across here, from this one into this one. But here's my Tiny Rock Small thing that I use all the time to bring areas together a little bit. Yeah. You can put that die information. I don't know if you can post. Does the chat thing allow for posting links in the chat here? I don't know if they block that type of thing, just to kind of prevent, like people spamming or something like that during chat. But you can put that, like, if there's information on that candy, you can put it up right here in the chat here. Let's see. Yeah, Stempel Mecca. Yeah, I was there last year. My client in the Netherlands, De Stempel Winkel, said that, she was hoping that would continue to go on. She said the woman that used to help out, I forgot his name, Hein, his last name. She wasn't working for him anymore. I forgot what she said exactly. That's one of the longest conventions, really anywhere. I don't remember when the first Stempel Mecca was, but I think it was in the 90s. mid 90s to late 90s, so that is a really established convention out there. Art journaling and painting. Oh, that's cool. Oh, you know her. Oh, jet ski. Yeah, in the Netherlands. Yeah, another really long time. Uh, vendor and stamps. So, okay, let's see here. Um, I'm trying to think this compositionally. I might want more um, trees or something out here. I'm trying to think. I do want this moon in here because that moon is really key to, unless people see that as a sun, then it's a sun. But I was thinking about putting the moon over this way. Okay. And I was wondering if I should add in another element in here that's red. I thought about doing like a red element in each one, but if I was to do that, I was going to do like separate scenes that were kind of a triptych, not like one continuous one. By the way, if anyone just joined in, this is going to be like displayed with a little bit of space in between each one like that. Um, okay, but maybe I'll just start toning some stuff in and see where it takes us right here. But nah, that area right in there does need something. I'm going to use this one right here and just have this. I'm just going to use like the very tops of this right here to make it look like really distant trees. I won't use the full height right in here. Okay. All right, so I'll just be using right in here. Anytime you're using a portion of something in a given space, don't measure it out and ink up exactly what you think you're going to be needing, because inevitably you might, I don't know, move or adjust a little bit, and then you'll have this big gap in between where you colored on here and where it ended up stamping out if you didn't color enough, you know. So let's see. I feel like right around in here. I'm just going to color this portion right here. So see that right there? I'm just going to use right in there, but I've colored down that way. I'm not used to my stamping area splitting into two constantly. All right. Yeah, just something like that. Actually, I could use another one out there. Or should we just leave it like that? Oh, yeah, I forgot I had this little one right here. This little part here. This will be perfect right here. See, I thought of everything when doing the designs, even if I've forgotten that I had this one already. Sometimes when my rubber guy doesn't cut, I just cut this little part right here. If you ever get these cling foam mounted ones and you find that you're stamping them out and you're getting some of that, excess rubber in there, just do a little, just trim it out, but don't over trim and don't under trim the rubber, of course. You need to have that cushion under there. So, just kind of take that out like that and see. I should never be stamping out any of that excess area again, right there. if I see too big of an area, if it stands out to me, um, when I don't make my own sets, but if it stands out to me like, that could use a little bit more of a fine-tuned trimming, I'll do that myself on, the sets that are going out. All right, we're going to stamp that out once, and then we're going to remove some of that ink from the bottom portion like this. Okay, so it's a little bit drier, it's a little bit wetter in the middle, and then darker up top. And then we'll take this right here, and we'll go for a little bit more background trees right in here. Like about like so. Oops. Like that. And okay, I need to keep doing that. That looks pretty decent, and it's adding more depth to the piece. Okay. Does that look a little bit better like that? It carries that idea out there. But see, I didn't want to compete with her by having really dark forms right there, so you just do them lighter. And those look pretty good in the background there. So let's do a few more of them right in here, I think. And again, that just kind of brings continuity between these areas right here. You have the same kind of form, but it's also the same value. This is why, a lot of times I hardly ever plan anything out like too far, because I have to kind of see what it's going to look like as I do it. And it's like you can kind of keep adding on, or something like that, and you respond to kind of how things are looking at any given time. Okay, like that. That looks a little bit better too. It's kind of, we have this kind of this arrow kind of coming right down here too. So it's kind of like pointing right at our little subject matter there too. I mean, I didn't plan that out, but you can kind of, if it looks like it, you might come up with something, some kind of like visual tool or something like that. You can just kind of double down on it, Sometimes they have trees in the foreground or something like that, and I'll kind of aim them a little bit towards my subject matters or something like that. All right, we're using a lot of pines here. Let's do this too. Okay, I added this one, the tops of this one right over here. You can't even see it too much, but let's go with something like this down here, and we'll bring some of these forms into the foreground too. And let's see what that looks like. Going back to Stepple Mecca, if Circus is still here, I think they asked me one time if I wanted to go out to Stepple Mecca. I think it was in the 90s, though. I could never leave for too long, for years and years. So I never did that show. I know, like Judykins would always do that show. They did that show so much that to make it practical, for those that don't know, Judykins is a company, domestic company here in the U.S., but In order for them to do that show, what they did was they had a completely separate um, inventory in Germany. Like, I don't know if it was complete with booth displays or anything like that, but they were able to keep their inventory for the show out there, and then just whatever they sold, they would resupply for the next year. So they weren't shipping out like a full inventory of their show, their show inventory. So that would have been like immensely impractical to ship things out there, and then what didn't sell you ship back. It would remove all, just the shipping cost alone would remove any type of profit at all from the stamps that were sold there. So I'm guessing that they might have been utilizing that inventory for wholesale sales too. I don't know. I don't know this really the story behind it because I never asked. But yeah, and that was all wood stamps too, pretty much with Judykins. So it's unless they were having some of their stuff manufactured out there. I don't think so though. Okay, anyway. I have all this sky area that I need to kind of address in here, but I want to start toning in some areas in here. I think I'm going to leave some room. I want like a quote stamp in one of these spots. It would kind of seem like it would go right here, and maybe I would switch the moon over here so that we have this kind of dynamic like this. Visually, I don't know, there's kind of a little bit of a movement going this way, and then it comes back like this way, with these forms kind of pointing over here. And then if I have a moon or something like that over here, you get this kind of cross dynamic going in here. We call it like visual dialogue. All right. So let's take care of this. Okay, so here's the concept here. The waves in here, you can see how I've rendered a little bit of an area in here. What you do is you tone in underneath the lip of these waves like that. And then you want to leave some lighting on here, okay? And then there's some of these trees in here that are lighter. Okay, they're like, what are they called? Larch trees, right? And we'll want to leave some of those light like that, okay? But we'll want to anchor these shorelines down quite a bit. And you can see where I've toned in this rock right here. And that's to give a lot more attention to this figure right here. If there's like too much illumination down here, it kind of detracts from our figure up here, I mean, she's going to be the only thing that's red in the scene, but you also want to kind of assist in the, kind of, I don't know, whatever attention getting devices that you can, and one of those devices or tools that you would use is tone and shadows. So as you can see, I'm darkening this in right here, which brings more light over here. So it looks like she might be kind of in the spotlight more so. And then something like this too, if you darken in this area right here, it kind of frames things off. What it's nice about this paper is that doing this thing this full size, you can see that kind of vignette that's inherently around on the perimeter for this. That's why I didn't mix this up. I didn't use this piece of paper right here, like in the middle like this, that which wouldn't match, okay? So I just went this way. So it's in the format of the paper. I just removed, some extra spacing in here so that I can mat it on an 8.5 by 11 too, in the end. But this vintage paper is pretty nice, and that gives you quite a bit of a head start with, not only the background tones and textures, but also the shading. And it's also like really cheap, paper. It's it's real thin paper. Should be available anywhere. I would guess. Germany. Walmart order corner dress, my craft corner slot punch. Okay. Huh. Oh, the Joannes, yeah, before they closed. I think I were mentioning, was it last week? I don't know. I was on Facebook and there was that ad that popped up, or I don't know, that didn't pop up, but I was scrolling down on my, I don't know, what do you call it? Is it your Facebook feed or whatever? I don't know whatever it's called, but I think it had that Joanne's. It was like 90% off or something like that. So I don't know. Maybe some of the locations are still open. That might have had like down to the last remaining bits of inventory or something like that. But sad about Joann's because there's not too many places where you can buy like fabric, I don't think, anymore in person. I remember in the, growing up, like in the 70s, mostly in the 70s, but we were, my mom and I, my mom would always be going to House of Fabrics, here in the U.S. And I think, I don't know, that place closed and then in the city where I grew up, there's a larger city a little bit to the north. And I think it was an independent store. It's called Betty's Fabrics. And then we started going there all the time. My mom, made a lot of clothes or whatever, did alterations. All right, so see this rock right here gets toned out like that. We can see the kind of the lighting starting to take shape in here a little bit more. You darken in the foreground like that. It's bringing the attention right in here a little bit more. And I want some lighting to be on this water right. Maybe that center. You know what? I think I changed my mind. I think that moon is going to be right up here, and it stands to reason in it. This right here, we have this little bit of a. I don't know if this goes down like this, but I'll put like a quote over here or something like that. But if I have like a moon in here. Maybe I can put like that glow-in-the-dark moon up here too. I don't know. It's supposed to be spot coloring, but okay. So in here, if the light source is up here, then I'm going to put lighting right down the center right here. Okay. And so we'll try to tone in the outside of this, and we'll have interior illumination right in these waves right here. But we still need to kind of render these waves a little bit more. Or, well, a lot more. Okay, so I'm going to turn this because this is just kind of the natural way my hand moves for this type of easy application like that. Anywhere long time ago. Yeah. So Germany, I've mentioned this before, I think, on these live streams, but when I first started in scenic stamping, and I saw a lot of the stamping artwork coming out of Germany, it seemed like there was a disproportionate number of people doing scenic stamping in Germany to other types of stamping. And then And the media of choice, it seemed like with a lot of their pieces, or almost all of them, it was colored pencils. So there's some really good scenic stampers, German scenic stampers, and colored pencil users. They really knew how to use those colored pencils. It wasn't just, the stuff that I'd be seeing, feedback coming from Germany. It would be like the stuff I'd see in the pages of Rubber Stamp Madness or something like that. If it was coming out of Germany from someone, it was scenic stamping, not necessarily Stampscapes, but just scenic stamping in general, and just some really great colored pencil work, both in the card itself, but also on the envelopes. And then later on, going back to Judykins, Rob was saying that from Judykins. He said, yeah. He goes, yeah, they all do. This is early on. He goes, yeah, they all do like scenic stamping out there. And by all, he just meant a lot. Okay, so going in underneath these waves and just reiterating what's on the wave stamp itself in terms of just darkening in the shaded areas. Now, that's all kind of the same tone in the shadows, so I'm going in here and just kind of darkening some areas underneath the shadows a little bit more. Like, see, that's a little bit darker right there, and see, this whole area in here is kind of the same tone. So what I'll do is I'll just darken in, a couple of the areas. I want to transition it out a little bit too, just so it's not so monotone. Going across in here. Can you see those like darker little spots like right underneath some of these areas? So you kind of get it, fairly consistent. And then you just go back in and you darken in these little spots like that, just to vary it a little bit more and to kind of try to prevent, I guess, tonal monotony. Okay, get like this right here. And we'll create some shadows from these trees right in here. So we'll anchor these trees down right here. So the idea is to go from darker here and then just transition it lighter down here. Okay, so darker to lighter like that. So let's see. I got this little spot right here that's a problem with a hard medium like that. I'll try to get it even across there if I can. It's a little bit darker up top, then just transition it a little bit. We don't want to go down too far, but all right, something like that. Okay, so it looks like that right there. So say it's kind of bringing the viewer's attention in here, and plus this is the lighting on the surface right here. Now we'll do that the same way for these background objects or trees specifically. Like that. Okay. And let's do the same right over here. This one has this cliff right here, and I kind of want to create separation between that cliff and the water. So I need to either make the cliff a little bit darker or the water a little bit darker. See, it's kind of blending in right there. I think the cliff should be a little bit darker. So let's do this right here. Let's create a little bit of stronger stronger edge to that right there. And then we'll tone this in like this. Now I made this area quite a bit darker, so I'm going to try to make this a little bit darker so that it looks more kind of, I don't know, matching, I guess, right in here with this tone right in here. So you darken in the rest of it too, I guess. Or take it down, I don't know, 5% or something like that. All right. These areas in here can use a little bit of shading. It seems strange doing all this with a colored pencil here. I'm used to using so much more multimedia. All right, and okay, now do you see, here's the problem right down here in these waves right here. I mean, I think it looks okay as is, but what I did was I added some extra tones right. See that little haze of darkness right in there? It's not, it's like super dark, but it's just a little bit more just to keep this from being too repetitive. So what I did was, like right down here at the base of these crashing waves, I just make it a little bit darker like this. I mean, it might be 5 or 10% darker. It doesn't have to be too much darker like this, so that it looks like, you know, the top part, that spray part, is a little bit more illuminated that way. So even in the lightest of areas or something like that, there still can be some variation. My question in these areas is, you know, should I tone in the background because the rock is going to be darker back there? But if I do that, then I won't be able to see these trees as much. So that's always kind of the question, you know, do you tone in for continuity or do you have more contrast so that you have the image definition? Maybe it's somewhere in between. And kind of the answer isn't always the same, you know. The next time you run into that same type of situation, maybe you make a different choice, you know. Let's see. Close to Dusseldorf. Yeah, you could access over there. So if you're into like in the stamping world or something like that, if you do any stamping, it's a good thing that you know, you're around the Netherlands. There's a decent some countries there's no kind of like stamping presence at all, you know, or very little, you know. But yeah, you're in a good spot. I don't, you know, I don't know how the situation is in terms of are you able to get all the supplies that you want without any problem? Like pads or, you know, whatever. Art supplies should be no problem at all, of course, but like in the crafting world, if there were things that you were kind of, you know, wanting. Like someone in the, like the UK, for example, was telling me that I was using a lot of the glow-in-the-dark vinyls of late, but they said, hey, it's like, I forgot, they told me what it was in pounds, like per sheet, and it was like really expensive. But then the glow-in-the-dark printable vinyl's not one of those things that's like, you know, a really widespread type of item as much as I thought it would be. But things like card stocks too, like I don't know, maybe with like high-end design and stuff like that, stipple mecha going on, maybe like glossy cardstock might be easier to, or I don't know, but it's got, you know, a little bit easier to find, but stuff like that, there's certain types of supplies that were a lot easier to find, like anywhere for a little bit of time, or I don't know, for a while, I would say, because a lot of the stores would carry that type of thing, but when kind of like a somewhat specialty item like glossy cardstock is something that's looked for. You sometimes it's not easy to find it. It just because it's not really sold to the public very much. Like even in the U.S., it's you can find it, and it's easier to find these days. But it's not like there's like 10 sources of it or something like that. Back when, though, with the stores, it used to be at every store. Stamp store, not necessarily scrapbooking stores. Okay, going for a little bit more of a, oops, a little bit more of a gestural mark right there. It didn't really do much. I was gonna say, where's Jeannie Siegel? You know, she'd be proud of me putting in these nice like confident marks like that, not just the like super safe ones. All right, so see that we have that lighting kind of coming in right in here. So we got like an lighting right in here. All right, it's kind of like darker on the edge, lighter in the middle. But then you have this area right in here, this shoreline right here. It's lighter in the middle here, kind of darker around the edge. Okay, and then we have that whole type of thing where it's a little bit darker right around on the perimeter and lighter in the middle. So it's like I always tell people this, but that's what I'm doing on most of my pieces. Most of my pieces, most of my objects, most of my areas, it's just getting this kind of this transitioning tone into them, you know. This one right down here, I mean, it was like small, but it's a little bit darker up here, a little, and it goes to lighter down there, you know. And that's how I transition my shadows. Lighter, darker, darker, lighter, you know, those types of things, as opposed to like solid areas of tone. Okay, you just kind of transition it off a little bit, be it with you know, colored pencils, whatever, hard, medium. And that's, you know, what I do with colored pencils. Every media that I do, I'm typically going for that type of thing. It makes it a little bit easier if I change media. Okay, now on her dress, it's going to be going from darker to lighter down here, so I want to make it a little bit darker up here and lighter in that transitioning area. But yeah, anytime I kind of change media, and if I'm going for something new, new for me, it makes it a little bit easier because at least I know kind of what I'm going after in terms of the coloring strategy. I don't always know how to get there when I switch off to new media because I have to learn how to kind of handle it. But when I think about it, it's usually, you know, somewhat similar in terms of that what I'm going for, and like an end result, you know, a general type of thing though. So oftentimes it's not really specific. Okay, see right here, she's casting a little bit of shadow, so I'm putting a little bit darker right here, and then as I'm coming over here, I'm going a little bit lighter, so it looks like this type of thing, and then I'll kind of darken in this right here, so it's a little bit darker and lighter, and that's what you have right here. Okay, and then her dress, you know, is like that, and it's going from darker here, like that, and it's lighter like that, and that's what I've put right in here. So she's a little bit more, she's like illuminated a little bit more. Or a lot more like that. She's kind of what you call like modeled now. You know, that instead of it being like two-dimensional, it looks a little bit more three-dimensional, I think. Thanks, Bonnie. Is there a black pencil as good as the Bell? I don't know. I just don't know. That's a good question, though, Candy. Wait. So the Derwent watercolor pencil seems pretty good. Actually, let me try that here. I don't know if it's you know, indicative or, you know, a characteristic of all or a lot of the watercolor pencils, but they seem to be really soft and I don't know. I seem to be able to do everything that I can with the barrel Prismacolor colored pencil. Now, I'm using the watercolor pencil here. I'm not going to do this water soluble type of thing on here with it. I'm just using this as a black colored pencil, but yeah, let me see. This one feels drier, of course. This one feels softer to me when I apply it. And I think it's equally as dark when I apply the same amount of pressure. Maybe I have to apply a little bit less pressure, maybe even with the watercolor pencil. So okay, so if you have like a really hard black colored pencil and you just don't feel like taking a chance, you know, you can always just order like a one black watercolor pencil. Maybe some of those are really hard too. I don't know, but the Derwent right here is really like soft and supple. All right, crashing waves. I'm going to add in that splashing area down below here, and we'll do that with some paint pens. But the Carbothello right here, the white pastel pencil, really comes in handy on these types of papers like this that are kind of matte and you know, the pre-printed types. You know, as long as they're not sealed off. Like some of the, I think it was the suede patterned placemat paper, disposable placemat papers. That one's a little bit too sealed off for me to use the pastel on it. But this paper right here is no problem with that. Okay, but in order to match that, though, you know, I'm really tempted to add this in here, but I guess I will. Not this green one, but if I do like a... That looks pretty dramatic. Nah, I don't want that, though, I don't think. Because I want the, you know, the spot coloring, I want that attention going to my figure here. It looks pretty cool, though. It would add a glow-in-the-dark aspect, you know, extra thing to this, quality to it, but yeah, I want the spot coloring. That moon would be really dominant of a, you know, focal, you know, figure in here. So let's see here. Let's go. Let's go right here. Where's the middle of this? That's right there. I think let's go like this. I'm trying to think if I want to add in one of my other moons, though, with a little bit more texture on the edges around there. Let's just add it in right now. I might add in some of the cloud textures around it. Let me see if that's in the center there. Okay, it's close enough, I think. Just as long as I'm not at like a 1/4 inch off or something like that. Okay, just white pigment ink. Okay. Yesterday's moon, I just added it monotone. Maybe I'll leave this one a little bit darker at the base, maybe, just, to give it a little bit of variation. This right here, I don't know if you can tell, but it's a little bit lighter down there, a little bit, or a little bit darker up top, a little bit thinner, like down here. Okay, this is gonna look a little bit lighter, or darker as it dries. That white becomes a little bit more transparent. Okay, so the Carbothello right here, we've darkened in underneath these waves right in here, but then we'll illuminate the top portion of it with the pastel pencil and try to get some nice soft. Yeah, I did, Bonnie, I did look at that mineral paper. Now, you probably explained what it was, but I didn't realize that. I thought it was infused with minerals or something like that. I didn't realize it was completely made with that. So I have that in my like shopping cart. I don't know, I wasn't quite sure. I wanted to take a look at those sizes again. And I think it's in tablets for the most part, right? But I did take a look at that. I am curious about it though too. Okay, so when you're adding in these highlights right here, I should mention this before I start. See these waves right down here? Kind of right in line. Here, I'll do this vertical right here. This is going to be my point of illumination right here, okay? So I'm going to illuminate these waves right in here like this. So it's going to be lighter right in here and then darker out here, okay? Now, this area is light right here, but this white is going to be lighter than it. Okay, so this is now going to be the lightest thing on the surface right down here. In the sky, we have the light source, and then it's hitting the surface of the, whatever. In this case, the body of water here. So, let's see. So I'm going to add a little bit more in here, but then what you do is you have it kind of a little bit more illuminated like this, and then as you move out to each side of it, you just have less of it. Okay, so here it is right here, and I'm using less pressure over here. Okay, so a little bit stronger and less pressure over here, and then you kind of transition or dissipate out the side like that. Now you see how this kind of lighting is hitting this area right in here. It's a little bit more, a little bit whatever, stronger pressure. So it's almost like you add a little bit. It's almost, I feel like I'm sweeping this. Like I'm sweeping out to the sides like this. Yeah, but that mineral paper looks interesting. And like I said, I'm curious. I'll be curious to see how it accepts inks. It seems strange to me that it's a porous surface, or or as porous as it is, in order to accept media. And I did see the listing of types of things that it's kind of whatever ideal for or geared for. All right, so see there's that. Doesn't it look like that our whatever reflections on here are kind of whatever influenced, being caused by that light source right here when you have it kind of a little bit more dominant right in here. Now I want these waves out here to have some of that light, but I'll just use a little bit less of it, or maybe like at the top peak of the, the wave or something like that. See, like right over here, we can have some like this, but it's just a little bit more emphasized right here, right through this passageway right here. And then you have it kind of going out to the side like that. But then you want to be consistent with that too. So like right in this area right in here. Now this is like sands, but it's supposed to be like wet sand, I guess, right? So it'll still be fairly reflective, but maybe I'll use a little bit less in here like that. So something like this in here. It's like a little bit more shimmery looking, like a wet, surface. And then we'll have some of these crashing waves right in here. Seems like there's a little bit more action in here than what these waves would, create. But okay, now I'm putting some of the highlights on some of these rocks right in here. Like the rocks that are still a little bit more illuminated. On the side of it, that's kind of facing the light, I'm putting a little bit of this tone in here. When I spray seal this too, because these are pastels, these colors right here aren't going to be as white looking. They look, it mutes them a little bit. It kind of blends in with the background. So I'm putting a little bit more pastel on there than probably the ideal amount, okay? Or than what looks like the ideal amount. But again, it's going to mute quite a bit. I bought mine from Peddlers, and she says Prismacolors separately. I like it in a mixture in all kinds of techniques and different materials. Yeah, journaling is like perfect for, and it seems like multimedia. Not all my style, but I am so open to find, I think, the flea market for journaling, old paper, and also stamps from the past. Yeah. One of my favorite, I don't know, kind of some of my favorite artwork just over the years that I noticed was a lot of people that would be doing like journaling types of things were calligraphers. And calligraphers, the one thing I found out about calligraphers is that they use like so many different mediums and styles and techniques. It was just whatever they needed to suit whatever type of application or thing that they wanted, they were trying to go for. I'm applying some of this tone, highlighting on the sides of the tree, facing the light source. Okay, so see this one over here. This one's in the darker area right here, so I'm putting a little bit less on this one. So you see this right here? In the light area, the stronger the light, the more the white. Less and less like that. So weak, stronger, strongest right there. In terms of this row right here. Okay. But yeah, I really liked calligraphers. And, like calligraphers' journals were amazing. Because they're just so, they're great at lettering and letter forms and things like that. That was like what I really liked about Somerset Studio was Colleen. It was a lot about stamping, but it was also about she really got into other things like calligraphers, where you just didn't see any of their work unless you're kind of on the inside with calligraphers. And I know you got people's zines and stuff like that, but I don't think there were any. Maybe there were national publications on calligraphy, but just some really amazing work, and totally multimedia. in those journals too. in in one of the conventions, stamp conventions, in Carson, my old boss that put on that show, she used to be part of the Calligraphers Association or the LA branch or something like that. So she would often have calligraphers at the convention. They weren't selling anything, but they were just doing like demonstrations or something like that, promoting the association. So they'd make out these tags or something like that with people's names on them, and I think they were finishing them off in some way. It was some sort of medium, but those ones were always cool. You'd always see people walking around with this, with their name printed out, like holding it, and kind of waving it around to make them, to help them to dry off. All right, so for anyone that's wondering what the heck, why is he like holding these three pieces? These are going to be kind of matted a little bit with that space in between. I thought it makes for kind of an interesting kind of presentation for this piece. I think it looks better than just like that. I mean, I think it looks okay like that, but when I split it up like this, it seems like it's more, I don't know, like graphic or something like that. And we'll have like something featured in each one of these that's, somewhat attention getting. So I'll put some sort of quote stamp up here, a word stamp maybe. It could be a word or quote or something like that. And then this one will have the moon in here, and this one will have the figure right there. So each one of them will have their focal point. I don't know. I guess this one right here will probably be the weakest, unless I throw like some birds or something up here too. That might be a good idea. I'll throw them like right around in here. Some sort of animal. I don't have any room down here anymore, but something like that would be interesting, I think. Okay, so anyways, here's the pastel highlighting right in there. And this is really good for kind of your subtle, soft lighting within your piece, okay? But I like to have a balance of different lighting effects and texture effects. And one of the easiest things to do, and fun too, to add textural and a different lighting effect. And it's also kind of brings continuity to the piece, or areas when you're just working on one piece, is just splatter painting, okay? Circus of Art, do you splatter paint? You probably do. Everyone should splatter paint, I don't know, at least once a week. It'll take you back to your childhood days, and thus you can retain or reestablish that a child's optimistic outlook. All right, some of the things that we do, in our pieces, I think it's a good idea just to do, because sometimes it doesn't make sense, like I'll splatter paint, and it's often like for stars or snowfall. In this case, like a splashing wave, or I put it at the base of waterfalls, but I might do a scene that's just like high noon and grassy meadow or something like that. And I still think looks good to do a little splatter painting on it sometimes. Sometimes I just say it's like pollen in the air if I have to come up with like a reason for it or whatever, or to justify it. But it's just, I don't know, it's just like fun to do. And it looks pretty good in those pieces too. Or it could be like little blossoms or something in the air. I found that I'm like splattering a little bit more like yesterday on this one. Just because the background's like really textural and it was kind of light down here, and just doing a little bit, it doesn't show up as much. So I like put a lot more on here on the one from yesterday than what I usually probably would do on some piece. But I don't know. I felt that it blended in with the background a little bit more. Like I said, it's all textured back here anyway, like that. So kind of adding in these textures in here, or like I said yesterday, it just kind of, I don't know, it just kind of blended in with the whole a little bit more. So I added more, and I thought it looked pretty good with kind of, I wouldn't call it an extreme amount, but just more than often when I apply. Okay, I'm doing right now what I say not to do, and that's put your thing right over the top of here because it can drip down, but I can't pick up all these three at the same time and kind of angle it, so I don't know. I guess if you're doing that, then just kind of do it after you've already sprayed, quite a bit off, so you don't get this drop of paint on here. Because, and again, this paper is a little bit more absorbent than like a glossy or semi-gloss, like a thick cardstock. So, and if you do get a blob on there, just kind of wipe it off. And if it still shows like it's kind of stained there a little bit, and then just go back with your colored pencil and just kind of tone it out a little bit. But, I'd rather not have to do that. The Mountains of the Canarian Islands. Huh. Yeah, we can understand your English. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Isn't it a great technique? We got to bring we got to kind of add our Jasper Johns in our pieces. All right. So that's the splatter painting right there. It adds kind of a nice texture and movement to the piece, but it's also contrast, from all those kind of soft tones in there. And the whole thing is kind of like softer in tone, when I'm doing stamping on the pre-printed papers. I tend to think they're all, they're more absorbent than like a sealed off type of cardstock, that clay coating on them. So I really depend on these crisper applications of media to balance off that softer texture. Okay. I would normally go out and spray seal this before adding this right over the top of the pastel. But we're live here, so I don't want to take off unless I absolutely have to. I usually have to take off during like a vellum demonstration because I have to go out and apply the glue adhesive to that. But adding this paint pen over the top of that pastel, sometimes it clogs my pen here. So it looks like it's doing okay here though. Adding some splashes around where this wave kind of is encountering this beach, cliff wall. Like that. Okay, so there's our crisp white opacity in here, okay? A little bit of shimmer right in here, right in here. And maybe that's a little bit too much in here. Again, I'll see what it looks like when I spray seal it. And when I spray seal it too, with a workable fixative, sometimes I have to go back in and tweak it a little bit. I'll add a little bit more pastel pencil back in there if some of it disappears or some of it looks too crazy in terms of too much texturing or something like that. But okay, so one of the things I did on this one here, I didn't do too much of it. I don't use too much of this white pigmenting added in here because sometimes I think it looks a little bit too awkward on top of this paper. Just because it's dark paper, there's not very much white in here. The only white in here is where I've kind of added it. So sometimes this is like too much, but I do really love the look of the texture though. With just about all scenes. So let me see if I can get a little bit of it in here somewhere, like sneak it in. Okay, so this area is really light right in here, but we have these dark trees right here. So let me see if we can do this right here. Yeah. So just see like that right there, just varying those trees right in there. It was all kind of monochromatic, or monotone. Monochromatic and monotone trees right in there. So I'm just darkening in that one a little, or lightening up that one just so it's a little bit varied right in there. And then we can add a little bit around some of these waves so that these waves aren't, like, see that black right there? I can vary this a little bit and make this a little bit more gray down here just so it's a little bit tweaked in terms of the value here. And it's texture too. It's a little bit softer in here, like that. Anyway, maybe that's all I'll do. See a little bit of a haze right there on top of that wave, being or that mist being illuminated by that lighting in there. So it kind of, I don't know, it just stands out a little bit more to me. We can kind of add this mist right down in here a little bit. And then see as it kind of comes out of that, it gets a little bit more defined, like about like so. And maybe I can add a little bit more than I thought I could here. It doesn't look like it's standing out kind of awkwardly. I don't know, maybe we've added enough of the white pastel pencil where this doesn't stand out quite so much. And then add a little bit of tone right back there. That pushes back that other cliff a little bit farther, maybe. All right, I think that's what I'll do right now. I think I want to spray seal this to see what it looks like. And I'll figure out a quote to put in here too, but see, here's the nice thing about this. I don't have to go back in here and add any tone because it's already inherently toned with that vignette with the paper. So that's why it's kind of, it's pretty fun using this type of paper right here. I don't usually use it in a full size like this though, but if you do, and you can take advantage of that darkening around in there, that's just like, I don't know, like saves you like 5-10 minutes or something like that from putting that whole vignette around on the perimeter like that. Of course, you're stuck with this kind of warm textured, aged look, you know. And I don't know how much you can color in here with like a ton of color, especially on this. You know, this is like really thin paper. You can see where my impressions actually like soak through it. But for this type of look right here, um, kind of an aged look, you know, and spot coloring in terms of what, you know, kind of I'm experimenting with here. Pretty fun, you know. A little bit of color like that, or I don't know. I guess you can color on here too. I was thinking about dye bastings, but I guess if you color with, you know, pastels or colored pencil on here, you can add as much color as you want. Again, you're starting off with this base tone in here, so I don't think you're going to achieve like certain types of color schemes that you might want if you want a pure version of it, because it's going to be going right over the top of that. But I don't know, you know, it's a really good one to start with here. All right, folks, thanks for joining in. I got to mount this and spray seal. I got to look for a quote. I might use, I don't know if I'll use the same exact quote here again, but so the spot coloring right here, I had one piece of red paper that I was glad I had to mount this piece with, which I almost never do, but spot coloring, I thought it worked out fine. This one right here, I was kind of wondering if I should have put the gold around on here. I thought the gold might be too much though, because it was like brighter than the yellow in here, but here's that spot coloring right in here. This one just was, I was really kind of struggling with this one. I should have done this one on the semi-gloss so that I can tone in with the colored pencil, but instead I did it on glossy, so it was kind of looking not so great. But then the white pigment ink in here and all throughout here really saved the day. And I wasn't doing this kind of just spot coloring of that yellow too. It looked kind of awkward, so all this white in here really saved me on that one. And this one, of course, this is the just the spot sun areas that I've done before with the mystic imagery, but I did them with some different images this time. But I really like this kind of whole thing. And I have a ton of that gold mirrored cardstock, so it goes pretty good with a warm tone spot color like that. So yeah, it's pretty fun to do. I've done a little bit of these types of things before with spot coloring, you know, but it wasn't kind of like where I was doing so like specifically. I don't know why on these spot color ones I'm going with these really super elongated verticals like this too. I don't know if it lends itself to spot color or what, you know, but I don't know. Maybe I'm on a slimline kick or something like that at the same time as the spot color curiosity. So, but yeah, this one definitely needs some sort of like quote stamp over here or something like that. And like I said, I might go with like some birds over here or something like that around the quote. Maybe I don't know. I'll figure it out. But the other thing I was going to do, if I did like 3 different panels, I was going to have her, but I was going to put like a sailboat in the distance, and that would be red. And then maybe some other thing in this one, I don't know, kid flying a kite or something like that. So there'd be like these 3 little red elements in there. And I thought about it. I don't know. I still want to do something like that. Maybe I'll do some pieces that are more like ATC sizes and do some spot coloring on those, you know, for like a triptych type of effect. Anyway, thanks, Cynthia. Hello in Maine to the Hodgkins. We'll call this a 3-panel piece as opposed to a triptych. Anyway, I had fun here with this one. I really like this composition. I'm using the, I hadn't used, I think, the rocks and waves before with this tall rock right here, but I really needed a shelf for this figure right here. And that tall rock worked out really good for that purpose, and stacking it like that. It's more like a rock like the size of El Capitan in Yosemite, but it worked good for this. And I needed something to go along with these more shardy types of rocks in the foreground like that. So yeah. So I did that one yesterday, but I was like, okay, I want to do that one more time while I've got these out like that so I can remember what I did potentially. I don't know, I'll forget it next week, but all right. All right, thanks for joining in everywhere, wherever you are. Good to see you, Circus. Thanks for checking out the vid. Hope you have a great rest of day and evening, or with Circus, it's night for them. And yeah, hope to see you on the next live stream. Good night, everyone.